All right, I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I am Juan Carlos Bagnell, SomeGadgetGuy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series, and the QA stands for, obviously, question and answer. I like to make my show just a little bit more interactive. If you're catching this live stream on a Monday, you can catch the live chat, and we have more of an organic conversation about some of the top tech news. I like holding my show on a Monday because it gives us a little time to sort out our feelers on the week before, kind of get through the weekend. If there's any breaking news, we can jump right on it. And then we can have a good old-fashioned conversation about it, a long-form podcast chat, just you and me and a dozen or so of my favorite tech buddies and tech pals. Alrighty, I'm seeing some phenomenal chat in the live chat. Kung Fu Penguin, LFA Reviews, Gary the Fireman, Matt Tyler, Mark Norgraves, Aditya Anil. I'm missing someone. Blang Bite. There are more people in here. Mango Bandito. I'm already excited by this. You guys are already doing over-under for housekeeping. That's hilarious. Just a couple things that I want to comment on, that I want to talk about before we jump into housekeeping. One, happy Chinese New Year. My daughter was very excited to share with me that 2020 is the year of the mouse. She seems very tickled by that information, that years could have animals associated with them. And then if you're celebrating with your family and friends, again, I am a very big proponent of any excuse for a good party. So get out there, celebrate, eat some good food, and spend time with people you care about. Man, a lot of estimates on housekeeping here. Boeing Bite saying 15 minutes. Gary saying over under at 12. Place your bets. Aditya Anil giving me some props at 10 minutes for housekeeping. I'm gonna put myself at 12. We're gonna see what we can hook up there. Boeing Bite, any excuse for a holiday? Shifty eyes emoticon. I like these days on the calendar, not because I feel like the overly commercial celebration of a holiday is something that we should all just lockstep commit to, but for, days of mourning, days of remembrance, and days of just straight up partying, I like having that reminder on the calendar. I like having that one moment to go or to reflect, and then also just some time to blow off some steam or to spend some time with some loved ones. I think that's sort of necessary. The human condition, we don't get those moments as often as we should, and I think we should celebrate them to the fullest. I think we should exploit them to the fullest when we get that opportunity to play, to relax, or to party. So awkward transition. The other thing that was probably one of the biggest news stories of 2020. I want to just share some condolences to the family and friends of the late great Kobe Bryant. I've lived in LA long enough to have just some of the periphery of LA basketball kind of rub off on me. I'm not the biggest basketball fan, but the more you read up on the life of Kobe Bryant and what an interesting figure he was, it's really difficult to walk away from that knowledge and not have a tremendous amount of respect for what he was able to accomplish. And as I'm sure many of you already know, he passed shockingly and surprisingly in a helicopter accident. And it's been touching, and it's been emotional watching the outpour of support from people all around the LA industry and all around the world. That this wasn't just sports star dies in helicopter crash. So many communities had some kind of attachment to Mr. Bryant, and I discovered the news. I got the news on an alert It started blowing up my Twitter feed while I was out at a park with some friends and with my daughter. And that's a complicated set of emotions. Someone I've never met, I would probably never meet, probably never have the chance to work with in any kind of form, the level of celebrity that he was. And yet there's still that attachment. There's still that idea of who he was and what he represented. And so I feel like this is another one of those solid reminders. I'm out at a park. I'm hanging out with friends. I'm having a great time. Got a little picnic going. Our kids are playing. And that was kind of the kick up the pants that I needed to appreciate the moment that I was having, because these moments are fleeting and these moments are temporary. And I don't feel like we always get the time in the moment to appreciate what it is that we have. So again, from something a little bit happier and more celebratory, the celebration of a new year, the kicking off of new traditions, to something like remembering an individual who still, he was only 2 years older than I am. And knowing that he hadn't even begun the next phase of his life and that he had so much more to offer the world, to take that moment, give yourself the time, give yourself the respect, appreciate, embrace, love, because we can't always be certain that we get the time to do the things we want or to see the people we love. So, just the most heartfelt condolences to anyone who shared their life with this family, who knew this family or were friends or family to this amazing individual. Rest in peace. Okay. Let's jump into some housekeeping. Let's get this out of the way. LFA reviews. Rest in paradise. I'll drink some water to that. Gary the fireman. January has been such a crap month. I feel like, I mean, not to get too maudlin here, I kind of feel like January has been the longest year of my life. This has been such an intense beginning to a new year. And I don't know if it's because I'm getting older and things are happening quickly around me or what, but man, I'm trying to take these moments where I can just latch onto something and take a second and breathe. And yeah, it's been a lot. So, a good afternoon to It's Thexy Pat. We've got housekeeping to accomplish. Last week was a really busy week. I got a lot of stuff done. Where are we at? We're at 9:09. I'm going to see if I can kick this out in 12 minutes. I'm not going to over-explain. My goal, not to over-explain every housekeeping story. So let's get into some screen sharing. Kicking off with a bang. This was a video that I put a lot of love into. Last week on the podcast, to over-explain this piece of housekeeping real fast, I showed off some of the new UI elements and some of the new features in the LG V50 Android 10 update. And I was really excited to show off that LG had started polishing up the desktop mode. I thought that was a newsworthy piece of software, especially for a company that has the reputation for software that LG has, that this is the fastest they've ever gotten an Android 10 update out, and desktop mode starting to catch up to Samsung in that regard against DeX or Huawei's desktop mode. Little would I know that while I was producing the podcast, folks at XDA and basically a number of Android outlets around the web started picking up on my breaking the news that this was an updated feature in Android 10. And I had a little moment where even on like Android Central and Android Authority and XDA, they were sharing me breaking the news that this was a feature on the LG V50. And it was just a funny little moment of, I guess I really was the only person who dug into this update. cool. I'm glad I actually covered the phone. So the day after all of that news broke, I finally finished up my proper look at the Android 10 update because there's a ton going on. It's not just Android 10, it's a new UI, updated support for the dual screen feature, desktop mode. This is actually one of the longer videos I've put together for an Android update. And of course, it's on an LG because apparently I'm the only guy who really covers LG. Moving right along, the other significantly exciting as addition to the Gadget Lab collection of gadgets, the Next Dock 2 is finally here. I am so ridiculously pants on head excited to have this proper laptop dock. Our phones are so stupid powerful now, but we don't really get the full opportunity to use all of that power, especially on smaller screens. And now we're starting to get some hardware options where we can expand on the functionality of our phone. So this is the first look. Excuse me. This is the first look. I'm going to spend a little time putting it through its paces. I'm trying it with a collection of different phones. You're going to have to kind of bear with me because there's also just a lot of confusion on this idea. It's giving me a lot of concern for tech enthusiasts when they're having difficulties kind of grasping what this really is. Like, I'm getting questions about, well, will it play this game? What about Fortnite? And you're like, no, this isn't a computer. It connects to a computer. Oh, well, but then why can't it do this thing like another computer can? And it's getting frustrating because I would expect gadget nerds to be more on the pulse. So I've got a lot of cleaning to do in the discussion of this. This is a piece of hardware I've been talking about wanting since the Asus Transformer days. Like, give me the ability to expand on the functionality of a phone or a tablet. And we're getting it now, but this is not a new idea, and yet trying to get these points across. Like, well, how can your phone be faster than a cheap laptop for content creation? And you're like, because I've been talking about video editing apps for years, but I digress. I don't want this housekeeping to run on longer and longer and longer. The first look video has all of my initial impressions, and I hook it up to a couple different devices. I connect it to a Nook, I connect it to a camera, I connect it to the LG V50, I connect it to a an Honor View 20. There's a lot of ground covered in that video, and then I'm going to expand on what the full functionality of this looks like. And we're going to talk about a little bit about this at the end of the podcast, because today's podcast is also going to feature a lot of right to repair commentary, and I had another proud of me moment with the Next Dock 2 and how repairable it might be. So stay tuned for that. Then back to housekeeping. This last week also marked the first proper video in my 2020 hearing campaign, #2020hearing, where I want to start by covering the basics. I'm going to put out a series of videos just discussing audio topics and hearing health topics. But one of the things I wanted to start with is just getting our terminology down for things like headphones. And so the first video, 2020 hearing, how to choose the right headphones for you. This is a quick primer on the different types of headphones. So circumaural, supraaural, interaural, bone conduction, and some of the variations that you'll find when you're trying to shop a pair of headphones. I still feel one of the most complicated aspects of consumer education is this notion that you spend a ton of money on one nice pair of headphones. And because they're expensive, they're nice. But that doesn't mean that you're getting the right audio solution for what you need to accomplish. So let's say you really need some sporty earbuds, but you spent a lot of money on some nice cans. That's not going to be the right solution for you. And so if we can start putting out, well, this is why open back headphones might be preferable to closed back headphones. This is why on-ear open earbuds might be a better fit for you than interaural in-ear monitors. We can start educating to that degree. Then I think we'll have an easier time with some of the later conversations that might get a bit more granular or a bit more technical. So I'm really happy. Hashtag 2020 hearing. The first videos are going to start coming out. I really want to try and get about a video a week on some kind of hearing topic, if not a video and an article. So I'm really going to need some help sharing this stuff. Already, anything with hearing health, audio health, tech and health, health and fitness, man, YouTube is slaughtering those videos for any kind of viewer engagement or sharing. I'm going to need all the help I can get in promoting these types of videos directly and organically, because SEO ain't going to get this done. Gary the Fireman, that was really informative. I hope the noobs paid attention. Oh, and Kung Fu Penguin, I am here for it. Mark Northgraves, I can't wait for the Google Buds Due. I'm really fingers crossed hoping that the new Pixel Buds are good. I just started using a pair of true wireless earbuds that I can't talk about yet, but I like them a lot as a nice evolution on that concept. There's just so many great things happening in audio, and it's a bit frustrating how Google's popularity algorithms tend to stomp on that. Speaking of audio and audio tech, the last video that I put out, LG tone-free true wireless earbuds, a second try at cutting the cord. A little weekend viewing for you. LG is trying again on some true wireless. This is the second generation of tone-free. I have them right here. Cute little earbuds. This is an open ear design. And this was also very telling. I talk about LG way less than large channels talk about Samsung or Apple. I mean, with over 1,000 videos, LG makes up a comparatively small chunk, a small percentage of the videos that I actually produce. But because I make more than one LG video a year, I got an instant response on this review from folks. Oh, well, here comes the LG shill again. As compared to all of the YouTube channels out there that cover in tiny detail every single leak and rumor of Samsung and Apple. But if you watch this video, I feel like this is the most critical I've ever been of an LG product. So it was particularly hilarious watching people auto-comment on the title, having LG in the title. Oh, he's gonna, I wish you'd stop, put down the LG pom-poms. And then having like the closest I've ever come to a critical review, a really tough review on an LG product. I feel like this is the problem we've got with tech and competition is if you talk about anything that's not Samsung or Apple with anything close to approaching the frequency of Samsung and Apple videos, then it starts to stand out. And that's wrong. Like, we should be covering the tech landscape broadly with the same kind of care and attention that we give to the two most popular manufacturers. But, you know, that's just me. So that's great. Oh, Tech Levin Mama giving me a wave, saying, hey, Juan. JMX Warrior, hey, out of work, I'm here. Thank you for joining the show. Kung Fu Penguin, I thought you were pretty critical for sure of them. Let's see. Matt Tyler, hashtag some not paid by LG guy. Yeah, I need to reach out to my LG PR rep because I don't think I prepped them either. I've given such glowing reviews to a number of their other products. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they felt about this review. Not that weighs in on my review. It's more, hey, so I'd love to talk to you about doing some G9 coverage after I was critical of your earbuds. From Ruru2, the AI Gore I see what you're doing there. Ruru2, the algorithm. That's funny. Demands you only talk about Samsung and Apple. And again, it's about tentpole popularity. Two more quick bits of housekeeping. Let's see if I can wrap this up. From my actual channel, all of these stories are on SomeGadgetGuy.com. You can catch everything that we're going to be talking about in the show notes for this podcast, including all of the housekeeping. I also helped the Newegg crew put together a killer gaming PC. This is a stonking powerful system, an Intel 9900KS, an Asus 2080 Super on an Asus Prime Pro motherboard. So the first thing I wanted to do to check out all of the ray tracing, high-end gaming performance graphics, lighting and shadow details was to play some Quake. Haha. Anyone? I mean, not even can it run Crysis. Can this thing run Quake? Haha. Okay, so this was a fun little trip down memory lane for me because Quake, NVIDIA officially helped the team re-release Quake 2, I should say, with RTX enabled. So RTX is all the fancy lighting that you see in gaming now, with like super high quality reflections and shadow detail and all that crazy stuff. But it's super graphics intense, and so this was my first RTX theater. I did like a Minecraft video before, but that wasn't an official NVIDIA RTX supported game. And so Quake RTX, before the most recent like little patch that they put out, you can get a demo. You can go get it for free on Steam. It's just a little demo of like the first map pack. My Threadripper with the 2080 kicked on like a blast furnace when I turned on the ray tracing for Quake 2. Performance has gotten so much better. As we start looking at the future of graphics and the performance improvements, and there's a new DLSS patch from NVIDIA that we're going to be talking about on Newegg, I think this week. But whenever we get these, like, it feels like such a small thing, but then it makes the game so much nicer. And it's hilarious when you see the blocky graphics of Quake 2 with these incredible particle and lighting effects. Your little blaster shoots a bolt down a dark hallway, and it perfectly illuminates with the bolt, and it looks amazing in like the most hilarious 20-year-old graphics. So it's as Boang Bite says, so purty. From Matt Tyler, I got RTX once. Antibiotics got rid of it. I need a tap. Is this thing on? Tip your waitress. I'll be here all week. And lastly, I made one other appearance outside of my normal collection of videos and articles. I'm good friends with Adam Dowd. We were Pocket Now alumni. We were doing a lot of podcast work together while I was at Pocket Now. And he was kind of instrumental in helping to bring back this podcast that you're listening to right now. But while he's producing a series of podcasts, he's also producing the Android Authority podcast. One of the sticking points, they hadn't really dug into the LG V50 update. So if you listen to the Android Authority podcast, you will hear a roughly 3-minute breakdown on LG V50, Android 10, and a new desktop mode. I helped him out with just sort of a TLDR on my experiences using the new LG V50 Android 10 update. And again, just kind of further reinforcing that apparently I'm the only guy that's actually reviewing LG products. But Adam's a good dude, and I really wanted to help him out. So you'll hear me just kind of pop in there in the middle of their commentary. Because again, I just don't feel like a lot of people are out there doing it. So that wraps up housekeeping. I ran long. What was that? Housekeeping was 15 minutes. Does someone got a time for me on that? I said 12. I was off by 3 with some little mini rants in the middle there. But someday I'll really lock this down. So there you go. Boing bite. Yes, I won. Someone give me that official time. I don't know. I don't keep a stopwatch for my own housekeeping segment. So we've got some news to cover. This week is following up on some of the topics that we've been covering in the past. We've got some stories that we need to keep checking in on. I feel they're critically important to the tech landscape, but they're not mainstream media sexy. So when we revisit something like a net neutrality, broadband infrastructure bill, funding bill, these are the kind of topics that have far-reaching ramifications for how we use technology. It's tough to get consumers interested in something that doesn't have quite the same political sexiness as what's going on with the current administration or with healthcare or with foreign policy. Our ability to disseminate information is significantly affected by some of this legislation. Our ability to use the gadgets and the technology that we're fans of, significantly influenced by this type of legislation. But again, it's the nerdy stuff, so it's hard to kind of keep people on the pulse of what's current. And that's why these two stories, the follow-ups on these stories, I feel are so critically important. So the first is a right to repair story. Right to repair is a very broad idea. We've been dealing with the ramifications of things like farming equipment. Part of the main reason why right to repair legislation is becoming so critical is because of farmers. Not necessarily like, can I fix my iPhone, but can a farmer fix a tractor that they own? Or do they even really own that tractor if they're kind of paying it off and they have to do business with only one company and one service center? And if they try and like swap the spark plugs, but they don't have the right software firmware update in their tractor, it could brick their tractor. I feel like right to repair is an excessively broad topic. We should all care about, can you fix your appliances? Can you fix your electronics? Are you allowed to fix your car? Or should the manufacturer be able to get in between you and the product that you bought from them to dictate what you can and can't do with that product? And Boeing Bite, I've been watching a lot of Luis Rossmann for that. Ruru 2, Tesla does not like right to repair. Boeing Bite, frick John Deere. And another organization to add to this list that we need to be concerned about would be the United States military. This is an article coming by way of Extreme Tech. Give me 1 second. I'm going to copy this for the live chat now. And I'm going to take a quick drink of water while you guys just stare at the screen. I'm on some crazy antihistamines, and my throat is super dry. ExtremeTech.com, the U.S. military needs right to repair legislation to fix its own broken equipment, written up by Joel Hruska. This is actually a slightly older article, but has been coming back up in topics of discussion because of some other legislation we're going to talk about in just a second. From the article, we've discussed the importance of right to repair legislation and the need to protect the rights of consumers to modify and fix their own equipment a number of times at Extreme Tech, but we've always tackled the topic from a civilian consumer perspective. According to a recent op-ed by Captain L. Ekman, a logistics officer in the United States Marine Corps, the issue has serious implications for military combat readiness as well. Ekman wrote a recent op-ed for the New York Times and co-authored a letter to the FTC chair Joseph Simons earlier this fall on the issue. According to Ekman, it's not uncommon for Marines to lose substantial amounts of time waiting for broken equipment to be shipped back to the United States, or in some cases, to one of several far-flung global repair centers, repaired and returned. So this is coming back up in terms of Boeing Bite. The military-industrial complex is going to lobby against that super hard. There's a long-running conversation about how military contractors do business with the United States government, how they're approved for contracts, how those contracts are fulfilled, how the maintenance on those contracts are fulfilled, and also expectations on longer-running pieces of equipment that then start to fall outside of those support contracts. I want to link this just because right to repair is becoming this large of an issue across all industry, across all sectors of technology, communications, transportation, farming and agriculture, and the military. And it's starting to get a little bit ridiculous in how we're giving up military authority to contractors for things that servicemen and servicewomen used to handle on their own. It's things like my dad's Air Force, and it's things like fulfilling fulfilling food shipments. Used to just have servicemen and women, especially like, you know, some of your lower ranking members of the military would just work in a kitchen. That would be part of the military staff. Then that gets outsourced to contractors at significantly higher prices than when it was fulfilled internally by the military. So more companies make money, and technically that's good for the economy, but it's not necessarily better for the military. Sometimes it's better, oftentimes it's more expensive for the same, and sometimes it's more expensive for worse. And we're starting to see the ramifications of some of these longer running bills and longer running contracts, which this relationship sort of shifted around the 1970s. So before the 1970s, the military just owned their stuff. They bought it and they maintained it. And slowly from the 1970s on, that has kind of eroded, and more power has been placed in private industry to take care of the equipment that the military owns but can't really do anything with. Fascinating read, and I feel like it's important just to kind of keep up on this. It is, like I said, an older story, but it plays directly into the legislation that we're going to be talking about next. Gary the Fireman, the anti-right to repair lobbyists, put some DC lobbyists to shame. They will say anything, and their arguments are thin at best. Gary the Fireman just says grunts. I try not to use that term because I'm an Air Force brat, and I kind of feel if I start talking about grunts or jarheads, that's extremely disrespectful to other branches of the military. And like I said, I'm just a brat. I didn't serve, so I don't feel like I get to own those labels. It's like my liberal guilt over calling someone a grunt. You know, again, you know, like, I'm Hispanic, so that means I can use certain words that other races can't use. I'm an Air Force brat. That means I can use certain phrases, but I'm not allowed to say grunts. And Boeing Bite. If it's specialized equipment, I can understand, but servicing a truck, and that's what's frustrating, is so many of these contracts build things in a way where, oh, you can service the truck, I'm sure, but there are all these specialized pieces on the truck that require special attention. So, catching us up to the present, there is a very important piece of legislation before the state assembly. Is it an assembly or is it just the state senate? I think it might be the state senate in Washington state. And there was a hearing just about a number of different topics, but one of the main topics was a right to repair bill going up in Washington state. And I watched the committee hearing live, and they brought numerous people on in favor of this bill, which is a pro right to repair bill. And they brought on some lobbyists who are obviously lobbying against the right to repair. And of course, we've already mentioned him here in the comments. Luis Rossmann was one of the people advocating for right to repair. If you catch my tweets, I wasn't like live tweeting it. I only put out like 4 or 5 tweets, but it was roughly a half hour of commentary and discussion. I was initially very concerned because these Washington state senators would take comments, like the opening comments from numerous people supporting, what is this, SB 5799, the electronics servicing bill. There were numerous people in support of this legislation, but none of them got follow-up questions. So Luis Rossmann, he's obviously based out of New York, flies all the way to Washington state, testifies before this committee for roughly 2 minutes, maybe less than 2 minutes, and then is thanked for his time. And then basically, and thank you for your time. Go get back on a plane and fly back to New York. This was very concerning to me because that kind of political that kind of political experience usually means that we're getting snowed, that there really isn't any interest in passing right to repair legislation. This is just kind of a show to make it look like the political process operates correctly, but really we know they're going to side with the money. When the anti-right to repair lobbyists took their seats to testify against this legislation, I was actually very encouraged that Washington state senators had very critical questions of their anti-right to repair policies. The shining moment was Louis Rossmann sits down and he basically spells out the lobbyists' position before they have a chance to testify. They're going to say that this is legislation in search of a problem. They're going to say that we do have choice. They're going to say that you can get these repairs, but let me tell you what this really looks like. And then not 5 minutes later, there's an anti-right to repair lobbyist saying, well, we think this is legislation in search of a problem and consumers have plenty of choices to get their gadgets fixed. And everyone say hey to Q3 Becker. He's here at last, finally joining the live stream. Hey, what's up, buddy? I was very encouraged that after Louis Rossmann called out their playbook and poked holes in their arguments before they actually had a chance to deliver those arguments, that the Washington state senators seemed far more critical of anti-right to repair talking points than any of the people testifying in favor of this legislation. The committee, I don't know about Washington state. I'm assuming Washington is probably a fairly left-leaning area, but this committee at least seemed in favor, more siding with the arguments for right to repair than against it. This is going to be a very important fight. We're seeing numerous organizations fighting this. The ESA, the gaming lobbyists, are fighting against right to repair legislation. And it was hilarious that one of the main questions brought up by a senator was, hey, what am I supposed to do when I want to fix my Xbox? I had a problem with my Xbox. I just needed a new fan. There's no proprietary intellectual property for replacing a fan, but I couldn't get it fixed. And every one of the lobbyist answers was essentially, well, that's a complicated issue. We know that, replacing one part, but we'd love to have another dialogue, a longer dialogue to help you come to the right conclusion. And you're like, that's hilarious. You can't even answer a question about a non-proprietary piece of technology like a fan in an Xbox needing to be replaced and how that can't be done locally. So I'm encouraged. I'm going to be following this bill very, very closely because we've seen significant opposition to right to repair legislation from all sectors: the agricultural industry, the gaming community, high technologies, automotive industry. Every single major corporate interest has some stake in preventing this from going through. Where I've even been disappointed. I'm a fan of Microsoft products, but I don't think it's enough that you tweak the design of a Surface so that I can replace an SSD, and then you also lobby against right to repair legislation. For me, Microsoft should be one of those driving forces for making their products less disposable and running longer over time. Microsoft's core business interests are far less tied to units of gadgets sold and far more tied to utilizing software services. So they shouldn't be on the same side as Apple for this kind of a debate. But yet we see time and time again that when Microsoft puts lobbying dollars for or against right to repair, they're often against right to repair. So this is going to be a pretty brutal fight. But if Washington state can stake out some claim to consumer protections for this regard, hopefully it'll influence the coasts. New York will probably get in and get something really punitive on the books there. New York's getting real cranky about their tech legislation. And then hopefully it'll garner some interest here in California too, because our right to repair legislation got tabled. Again, the influences from Microsoft coming to lobby against it was enough for us to shelve our right to repair bill. And I'm very disappointed in that. So hopefully another state can school us and get us back on track. Gary the fireman. Luis should really run for office or get a law degree. He slayed those clowns. I was impressed. On his own channel. In fact, it's one of the top voted, I think it might be the top voted story this week on Glowing Rectangles. Luis Rossmann cut the video of just the right to repair section of this committee hearing. So again, there's going to be another link that you can easily find. And it's about 35 minutes of testimony and questions. But the questions are mostly thrown at the lobbyists. He brings up fantastic points, articulately delivered with good analogies. Because that's another thing too. It's really difficult to get a techie idea across to a politician without using clumsy metaphors. And I feel like Rossmann has refined his arguments to a point where they're pretty easily understood even by lay people. His story of what he needs to do to replace parts in a MacBook is horrific, where he has to buy other products purposely to destroy them to get these parts that Apple won't sell to service centers. I mean, it's crazy. And to think that we're trying to prevent a laptop from becoming e-waste, so we have to create a ton of e-waste to get one little part that Apple won't sell or won't allow other companies to sell. The manufacturer of that part is told you can't sell it to anyone else. It's totally worth watching this just to get a clearer sense of what the stakes are, because we're creating an insane amount of waste, even when we're trying to take care of these products and make them last longer. Gary the fireman, robust discussions. From Fat Produce, I just want politicians to jump down these lobbyists' throats publicly during a hearing. We got pretty close to this. I feel like Washington state senators did us okay in the cross-examination of the lobbyists here. So moving from that, we talked about this a little last week. We talked about it a little the week before. There seems to be growing momentum in the EU for some kind of legislation to force a universal charger. So this is coming by way of PC Mag. I'm going to screen share it here, and let me get the link into the bottom. From our last couple discussions, I am a little concerned. I think legislating something like this is a broadsword where maybe we need a scalpel, but then also there doesn't seem to be any corrective action in the market. The few companies that use proprietary chargers on gadgets like smartphones don't seem to face any penalty for straying from the tech curve. So if there's no corrective action to get us onto an actual standard, I feel like one of the only outlets that consumers might have would be some sort of legislative action. I've elected these people to represent my interests, and I'm not going to leave Apple, but I really wish they would use USB-C. Ideally, we would say vote with your wallet and show Apple that you're not going to continue doing business with them. And while that's easy for a techie or a gadget fan to say, the realities of that are far more complicated than individual consumers who have invested in years of use on a certain platform just flipping sides. You just switch sides. That's how you show Apple. Unfortunately, it just kind of doesn't work that way. So we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't think legislation is a great idea, but I also don't see anything that's going to correct this situation. Lightning is not a good connector anymore. Oh, excuse me. Let me take another drink of water here real quick. Boeing bite. One port to rule them all. One port to bind them. And also Matt Tyler, EU, 4 days until Brexit, so they can't make us abide by their ridiculous ideas and laws. Matt is Matt just got an iPhone, so now he is like a #1 iPhone shell. So he's like all about lightning connectors now. This is from PC Mag. EU, we may need a law to force iPhones to adopt USB-C. Apple may be forced to drop the lightning connector on iPhones for the USB-C charging port if European lawmakers get their way. On Monday, members of European Parliament urged the European Commission to take regulatory action to force every smartphone vendor to adopt a single charging method. In response, the Commission plans to consider a legislative approach to tackling the issue, Commissioner Maros Sefcovic said following the debate. I hear you loud and clear. Very rarely do you have unanimous opinion in the debate. So this is an ongoing discussion where over the last, I want to say like 12 years, we've been trying to push the industry towards adopting one consistent connector standard. 15 years ago, every gadgety device had its own proprietary dock connector. As much as I loved the classic days of Windows Mobile PDAs, iPAQs were crazy frustrating where from iPAQ to iPAQ, you would need to buy all new accessories, all new cables, all new connectors, and nothing was really standardized. Once we started adopting USB as the primary interface with mini USB, then micro USB, that got way easier to deal with. Now, I feel like USB-C, the port itself, is the correct way forward. The port is so flexible, it can kind of do anything. It can be a data connection standard for USB information. It could be a monitor standard for graphics. It could be an audio standard for headphones. It is a flexible enough implementation that even though I have some long-term durability concerns with the way that the device has to have a special little pin connector inside the device, it's the opposite of how the Lightning connector works, I still feel like it's the best way moving forward. And Apple's already on board. USB-C is the primary charging interface for things like laptops. It is now the connector of standard for Thunderbolt. And it's also the standard cable for the iPad. Literally, only the iPhone is left with this Lightning connector, aged connector. Lightning doesn't support great I/O. It's a USB 2 spec, so it's stuck years behind where the industry should be. It's a proprietary licensed connector, so it's more expensive to implement. And Apple cables are crap. Like, they fall apart so much faster than competing USB solutions. So while there's still some fragmentation, support for USB-C changes from solution to solution to solution. And it can be a little confusing for PCs. You know, this is a Thunderbolt connector, but it's a USB-C product. That stuff can be really frustrating. The actual oval port, I think, is the right way going forward because it's so flexible in its implementation. There will be terrible teething pains getting everyone over to USB-C as a spec, but I feel like this is the right hole to put on our gadgets. Of course, Apple disagrees. Let me get this queued up here. This is a story by way of Engadget, just following up on the PC Mag story. Drop that in there. Apple says EU push for universal phone charger would stifle innovation. Written up by John Fingus. I'm going to skip all of this. Blah, blah, blah. Apple feels like this is going to be too expensive. Here we go. No, where's the Apple statement? Oh, here we go. Apple stands for innovation and deeply cares about the customer experience. We believe regulation that forces conformity across the type of connector built into all smartphones stifles innovation rather than encouraging it and would harm consumers in Europe and the economy as a whole. More than 1 billion Apple devices have shipped using a Lightning connector in addition to an entire ecosystem of accessory and device manufacturers who use Lightning to serve our collective customers. Legislation would have a direct negative impact by disrupting the hundreds of millions of active devices and accessories used by our European customers and even more Apple customers worldwide, creating an unprecedented volume of electronic waste and greatly inconveniencing users. We do not believe there is a case for regulation given the industry is already moving to the use of USB Type-C through a connector or cable assembly. This includes Apple's USB-C power adapter, which is compatible with all iPhone and iPad devices. This approach is more affordable and convenient for consumers, enables charging for a wide range of portable electronic products, encourages people to reuse their charger, and allows for innovation. Prior to 2009, the Commission considered mandating that all smartphones use only USB micro B connectors, which would have restricted the advancement to Lightning and USB Type-C. Instead, the Commission established a voluntary industry standards-based approach that saw the market shift from 30 chargers down to 3, soon to be 2. Lightning and USB-C, showing this approach does work. We hope the Commission will continue to seek a solution that does not restrict the industry's ability to innovate and bring exciting new technology to customers. I feel like Goran Petrovic in the chat just kind of nailed it. What innovation? I haven't seen it in a while. A meaningful one. So, there is a philosophy that I support from Apple. When you codify something into a law, it is very difficult to work out the legal entanglements of how that law will affect future behavior. Laws tend to be reactive. There's a problem today with having multiple chargers and standards and plugs, so let's build a law. But then 10 years down the line, what might that mean for some future interface that we haven't dreamed up yet? That is why I'm conflicted about the EU calling for a legislative action. But Apple's arguments here fly in the face of Apple's own technology philosophy. This is the company that likes to cut dead weight. This was the first mainstream manufacturer that got rid of the floppy disk. This was the first mainstream manufacturer that got rid of optical drives, CD-ROMs, and DVD players in their products. This is the first mainstream manufacturer that got rid of the headphone jack. They don't seem to have a problem innovating as long as they can sell numerous solutions to fix their innovation. So they get rid of the headphone jack, and now it costs you $10 on top of your $1,000 smartphone purchase to plug in some wired headphones, or you could just buy some $250 AirPod Pros, right? We've solved the problem of innovating on our phone by you spending more money on accessories. And Lightning is that last holdout where Apple can license a proprietary solution so that consumers have to spend more on Apple-approved solutions, right? Apple chargers, Apple cables, they have to be licensed and certified. There is a consumer benefit that these products are somewhat guaranteed to work well with your phone, but I wonder how many consumers really benefit from that certification process over the amount of money you need to spend to be on the certified bandwagon. This is also different than where we were with micro USB. I actually do agree. If we had succeeded in legislating micro USB as the one only standard for smartphones, it probably would have been more difficult to implement USB-C. But now that we're at the transition point for USB-C being a very commonplace solution on all of our products. And again, in a large part, thanks to Apple getting rid of all of the other ports, getting rid of card readers on their devices, and moving to USB-C on their MacBooks and on the iPad, that I don't feel the same concern that I would have felt with micro USB and with USB-C on the horizon. I feel like right now we've got a safer 10-year outlook with USB-C, and eventually then just moving to wireless, protocols for a lot of consumery things like file transfers and for syncing and for sharing and for stuff like that. So again, it's kind of playing a little loose with history, and then also kind of betraying the stances Apple has taken with their own products. The industry's already moving to USB-C. You don't need to legislate us going to USB-C, because we'll eventually do it probably, but we won't because we're making too much money. But don't worry, it'll happen, but it won't. But we're making money. So that's what's really important for the economy. From Q3 Becker from Steve, they have yet to innovate making a fraying USB-C cable. Boeing Byte, they can ratify standard connector over time. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about some beefy specs on some future phones here in the live chat. From Steve, Q3 Becker, maybe if they actually add a full Thunderbolt port on the iPhone, I would maybe consider it a pro device. I mean, Thunderbolt on mobile is actually probably pretty difficult to properly implement because of all the bus speeds. We don't need to get into that. Again, from right to repair to standardized connectors, we're sort of swimming in some significant e-waste, and it would be nice to start paring some of this stuff down. I have some severe concerns over mobile gadgets going to all wireless. At first, it sounds like a cool idea. Like, hey, it would be really cool if I could charge my phone without having a bunch of cables and without having a bunch of chargers. But the actual implementation of that is going to mean consumers needing to buy docks, wireless charging docks, a wireless charging pad for the car, wireless charging pads for the home. And then it becoming more difficult to do things like plug into a computer and share some files. And I fear like we're going to see a bunch of half-hearted proprietary solutions. Like here are 3 pogo pins on the back of our phone so that you can connect a USB cable easily. And so I kind of hope that we don't fall for the same crap arguments that we fell for with the headphone jack. The headphone jack is still a phenomenally useful port, not just for plugging in headphones, but for connecting devices to legacy equipment, to mixers, to cars that don't have Bluetooth, and then also for content creation, being able to plug in things like microphones. There's still 100 years of life left in the phono jack. It'll be a long time before we can properly, professionally replace all of the functionality of this one standardized connector. And that's for something that just has 3 or 4 pins on it. A tip, a ring, a sleeve, maybe another ring, so that you have left channel, right channel, and a microphone. USB-C has many, many more pins and a lot more flexibility. So I hope we're able to hold on to the idea that a computing device should have some kind of hard cabled I/O that you can fall back on. Even when everything's wireless, it is still supremely functional to be able to plug in a cable when you need to, when there's a necessity for it. From Matt Tyler, Mr. Who's the Boss shared a video of future wireless charging with no contact required. Over-the-air wireless charging is a thing, minimal and in baby stages, but it's being worked on. And that's great. I mean, again, I think having a fog wireless charging standard where you don't have to put the phone down would be great. How long will it take before over-the-air wireless charging is so pervasive that we don't need to worry about faster charging or charging overnight or plugging in for just a quick top-off, where 15 minutes on a charger for a OnePlus 7 means an entire day of runtime. And in addition to that, how do we guarantee that spec isn't going to start heating up gadgets, heating up batteries? Qi charging is very inefficient, so it wastes a lot of power. And then on top of that, what do we do with data? So being able to share files over Wi-Fi is super handy, but if you need to move information, the stability and the speed of a cable can't be beaten by wireless yet. Can't be matched by wireless yet. So there are a lot of things that we need to figure out. Again, it's why I hope we don't just, progress, let's get rid of the charge cable anytime soon, because it's not really progress. It'll feel like a pretty significant step back. Now, in all of this news right here, I just want to take one quick second to point out that literally today is the 10-year anniversary of the unveiling of the very first iPad. Someone shared this on the Apple subreddit. Today marks the 10th anniversary of Steve Jobs unveiling the iPad. And I watched a little of this while I was prepping for the podcast today. And for as much as I made fun of it, there was a Mad TV sketch about Apple coming out with an iPad, which was scatologically much grosser than the actual iPad that was released. There's just so much I miss about Steve Jobs being our gadget nemesis, where I went from being a sort of a true believer in Apple products to being a harsh critic of Apple products. But you'd walk away from a Steve Jobs keynote, and I'd always walk away going, dang, there's that one thing I desperately want, and Steve made it look so cool, and now I'm angry that I don't have it on a competing product. And I got to say, the iPad was a brutal stab at the mobility tech industry. Again, refocusing on the core experience that consumers were looking for, circumventing a lot of the garbage that you had to deal with, on Windows laptops at the time, got so much right. And even that first generation product, which was, a little shaky. I feel like by the iPad 3, we had a proper computing platform that could handle a lot of consumer need. I got to say, it's continuously one of the things I kind of keep peeking back in on in the Apple ecosystem. Now that the iPad uses USB-C, iPadOS fixes a lot of the issues that I have with iOS. It's a more reasonable cost to me for the type of mainstream computing that consumers might be interested in. Again, exactly why I'm excited about things like NextDocs, using my phone for more of my computing. 10 years ago, Steve Jobs sat in a chair and showed us just how easy it would be to flip around on a larger screen and use a tablet and consume media and get a little writing done. It's pretty crazy. I keep looking back at those times, and I at the time I didn't know how good we had it. Not just for competition, but just for that kind of presentation. And I feel like it's kind of lacking today. There isn't someone with that same kind of gleefully antagonistic approach to gadget commentary. For being someone I would probably never have wanted to work with or work for in real life, Steve Jobs was a beautiful and an amazing nemesis. So it's just a fun little trip down memory lane. From Kepper67, iPhones and iPads seem like they came out yesterday. Time flies. It's pretty crazy, man. See how far we've come, and then also to kind of look back and realize, there hasn't been as much revolution as we claim there has been. The core, mobile or the core computing experience has gotten more refined. Hasn't really been revolution. It's been more evolution, which is fine. But I can totally understand why a lot of consumers are burnt out on this stuff. With all the promises made, probably haven't really lived up to. All right. Oh, Matt Tyler, I hate this Twitch app on the iPhone. So delayed seeing comments about the iPad 10-year anniversary before on my phone. Juan's even mentioned it. Kepper67, sync is pretty good on the Android Twitch app. So, I don't know, maybe the iPhone Pro just isn't powerful enough to use Twitch. Maybe that's the problem. The Sentinel 909, I remember being angry at Apple for successfully pushing a product we don't really need and successfully creating demand where there was none. But again, it's interesting. I'm a big advocate for getting more use out of certain tiers of product, right? I'm not super hot on tablets, but I like where software innovation can improve professional use for mobile-based electronics, excuse me. And one of the things I have to credit Apple for, from the iPad to the iPad Pro, that really has lit up software support. It's where Microsoft started taking the mobile apps for Office more seriously. It's where video editing got much, much better. It's where camera controls and pro apps for audio recording and distribution have gotten more serious. And while there are definitely pros and cons to leaving a traditional computing environment, I look at how much we're expected to pay for, consumer electronics, and then how quickly we're supposed to replace them. And now I feel like we're starting to get the real software solutions that can help us make use of this stuff. That it's more, I don't know. To me, like the bang for buck is starting to finally arrive where we've been promised it would be. It seems like it's real now. It's starting to become more real now. So I totally get, tablets are a solution in search of a problem. And I've said stuff like that, even on this podcast. But we are starting to really develop solutions. People still kind of have to find the problems, but the power is there for us to actually utilize this stuff and make use of it. We're seeing some cranky commentary on iOS. I was maybe a bit glib in talking about Matt using an iPhone Pro. Q3 Becker, iPads are just big iPhones. I used to agree with that until iPadOS came out. With iPadOS now, I'm angry that iPhones don't have the same kind of operating system environment as iPads do. Let me take another quick drink of water because we got to take a quick break here to plug the subreddit. And we got some good stuff on the subreddit. I need more water than that. Time to move to mug 2. And get this out of the way here. Okay. Every podcast has a subreddit. Some Reddits are kind of built on sharing news clips. Like, hey, here's something we hope you talk about in the next live stream. Some subreddits are kind of just fan sites where people talk about how great the podcast is. I have a subreddit for this podcast, but in keeping with the mission of trying to support content creators and find people that I think are doing good work and trying to signal boost creators that deserve more attention, my subreddit is not really about my podcast directly, but is a place to discover other content you might like. If you enjoy these kinds of gadget discussions where it's not just what's the most popular SEO topic, we can dig a little deeper on tech and politics. We can dig a little deeper on gaming, on infrastructure, on broadband, on the FCC. And then also we can cover other brands that don't get the YouTube algorithm love. Then I think you will very much enjoy reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. We just broke 600 members. Ooh, ooh. It's a tiny little subreddit that could. Every week we pick up a couple new followers, a couple new subscribers. We're at 604, and we've got some great shares on the subreddit this week. Let me cue this up here. A number 1 with a bullet, the top story, the top voted story on reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Luis Rossmann, right to repair in Washington. So I said for the bill, SB 5799, he did his own cut. The Rossmann channel, YouTube channel, the Rossmann Group YouTube channel. And he's all excited because they actually spelled his name correctly, where I did not spell his name correctly when I was tweeting about him being in front of this subcommittee. He's got the full, it's a 40-minute video, but I would say the actual commentary is about a half hour. And if you want to see just the discussion on this bill for right to repair, he's got the perfect cut. There's no one else needs to share another recut of this actual committee hearing. He's got it right there, so you can check it out. It's good times. And let me get this out of the way here. Then, oh wait, sorry, I've got this website is not working. Okay, number 2. This is some jerk who keeps kind of making it into the top 5. He wears hats. He's got a super punchable face. But LG V50 on Android 10, new OS, new UX, and a desktop mode. This hat guy. I'm saying this all in jest. It's actually not super common that I make it to the top of my own subreddit. But this V50 video has been doing fairly well. Again, not a lot of people covered this update in depth, and there are some LG fans out there that I think are feeling a little neglected. So this video got a lot of love on the subreddit. The number 3 position, Xiaomi Redmi Note 8 Pro True Review. Tana, so lit. I like TSL just because he gets dirty in his tech commentary. He says more swear words than I do. But again, in the top stories, we've got right to repair, we've got an LG V50, and we've got a Xiaomi in the review lineup. This is great broad commentary. Then wrapping up the rest of the top stories of the last week, we've got Painfully Honest Tech taking a look at what he'd like to see in an iPhone SE2. We've got Zach Talks Tech interviewing Mr. Who's the Boss. We've got an iPhone 11 Pro Max long-term review. We've got my video on the next stock, the Fossil HR Hybrid, and all the way down to Gary Explains, wrapping up the top 10, Arduino versus Raspberry Pi, which one is better? Gary Explains is a regular feature in the top stories on Glowing Rectangles. Aditya Anil, yes sir, yes sir. Tana is one very real dude, brutally honest. Super broad commentary, lots of different tech topics to dig into. If you look through your YouTube feed and you let Google kind of take all the algorithmic reins for collecting your content, you're going to see mostly Samsung and Apple videos with some OnePlus and Pixel commentary sprinkled in there. If you've never been to reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles, I guarantee you will see a content creator you've never seen before and someone that you'll like their work. It's a promise I'm making to you with no money back guarantee. I guarantee there will be no money back if this guarantee is not fulfilled. But again, there are so many creators out there, and it's not just can we get a smaller player up to monetizing, or can we get a medium-sized channel up into better sponsorships. There are even larger channels that just aren't doing as well because of the way that YouTube is manipulating viewer feeds like Facebook does with their main timeline. There are so many creators that are starting to fall off of the review bandwagon. For example, I like pointing him out because I think he's doing amazing work. He's been internally consistent. I don't always agree with him, but I've never faulted his opinion on gadgets. But someone like a Flossie Carter. Now, Flossie used to get shared a lot on Glowing Rectangles. If you're looking for some easy karma to build up your Reddit credibility, share some Flossie and upvote in Glowing Rectangles, and you'll have more reputation and people will take you more seriously on Reddit. We'll have the ability to start feeding this content out to larger subreddits and getting more exposure. I don't think this is ever going to be a front page kind of sub, but every week it's growing, little bits here, little bits there. So we still need your participation. We still need you sharing awesome videos. But more than that, we need you upvoting and leaving comments. The more that we see that participation, the more that these channels, these creators, these topics are going to get broader views and broader appeal. This was my mission in 2019. I'm going to be continuing to support this initiative in 2020, and I think it's already proving to be a benefit for the people that are participating. Great content discovery. We need your support to help better promote the kind of content that we'd want to see. If we leave it up to algorithms and we leave it up to economic interests, then the gadget landscape gets really dull really, really fast. So again, reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. And I hope you'll support some amazing content creators because they're doing great work and it's entertainment and it's content for you to consume. We need to be more proactive in supporting that content. A passive view doesn't mean a whole lot, but a view, a share, a comment, an upvote, that can really help move the needle on encouraging a creator to do more content creating. That means you get more cool stuff if they see that their numbers are going up. So someone, DTNL asks, wait, Flossie isn't being supported by the algorithm? That is wrong. I feel like Flossie is one of those where his channel's still going to be doing well. Like normal video views for him are hundreds of thousands of views on even pretty, mid-range kinds of topics. But for his subscriber base, you would expect that his videos would hit harder. And I have to really respect that he's held to a very consistent style of video production, which in the current flavor of YouTube isn't in vogue. Camera, simple shot, top down, hands moving around a gadget, talking about it, sharing his thoughts. Thank you, subscribe. Long form videos, lots of discussion, lots of commentary. YouTube right now wants all of our gadget reviews to really be more like commercials for the product with lots of really slick production and cinematic video and beautiful audio and soundtracking and not a lot of commentary, but man, that video was super pretty. It's very engaging. And it's also just long enough that you can add an ad break, but not too long because you don't want the viewer retention to fall off. If the viewer retention falls off, then you might as well have not watched the video at all, right? Am I right? Flossie is born of that older style of gadget review. And so I want that consistency. He's been at the game so long and he's been so consistent for so long that I trust that he's taking this opinion seriously. He's not trying to impress me with the prettiest video. Straight up, legit, sharing his thoughts and his opinions. Most of the time I agree. Sometimes I think he's full. I almost said something kind of off color there. Sometimes I think he's being a bit silly, but I've never really questioned his dedication to his opinion. Like, I don't think he switches his opinion to get better ad views or to get better metrics. And that's a voice that we desperately need in this space. And it's one that's not really being promoted by the current flavor of the YouTube algorithm. The Sentinel 909, he just switched to a Razer laptop and all the Apple fanboys are mad. And just so that those of you know who aren't following the live chat, it looks like Matt has figured out some of his Twitch issues. Okay, we've got a little gadget block coming up here. Again, it's kind of a bit more newsy, but a quick story here by way of XDA developers. We touched on this, was it last week or the week before? Google is finally starting to develop an airdrop competitor. I was super disappointed that in Android 10, the NFC handshake for beaming a file over Bluetooth was completely deprecated. So it doesn't work at all in Android 10. I loved being able to tap two phones together and then initiate a Bluetooth file transfer. And I used to use that a lot. But I get it. Bluetooth's super slow, so a lot of people weren't really on board. I'm hoping that nearby sharing is good because we really need something like this in the Android ecosystem. So this is written up by way of Michal Rahman on xdadevelopers.com. Oh, and let me just drop the link in. I'm supposed to be getting better at this stuff, and I'm not very good at it. So, first look at nearby sharing, Google's airdrop clone for Android. And this is an APK teardown. This is something that's in beta. It's not an accessible part of Android 10 for general consumers, but XDA is showing some hands-on with this hidden setting that you can find a way to enable on Pixel devices. And they've got it in action here. I'm not going to play the video because I don't want to get dinged for any kind of copyright. But if you hit that link, you'll be able to check it out too. And I'm hoping that this means that we'll see some kind of positive action in a soonish update for Android 10. Like I said, I mean, it's just little things. Like I don't always have a SIM card in every phone I keep on me. When I'm doing camera reviews, I take a really great shot on a phone without a SIM card in it, and I have to Bluetooth that file over to my phone with a SIM card if I want to share it on social media right in that moment. First world gadget reviewer problems. But I have seen where a circle of iPhone users will be like, oh yeah, did you get that selfie of us at that concert? Let me just share it to everybody. And they initiate this airdrop handshake very, very quickly and very efficiently. And I'm a little envious of that. I would like that feature too. So I'm hoping Google polishes it up because it would definitely make my life a little easier. Moving right along, this is just a quick little gadget story. I have been very taken with LG's implementation of dual screen phones. I like that it's a case, you snap it on, you get a second full screen that works as a whole separate phone so that you can do two apps at the same time. And that you're not married to this concept because Android is still really rough around the edges for supporting it. Android 10 is still not quite smart enough to do this right. So I feel like Google is really going to benefit from Samsung, especially Samsung after the Fold debacle, but then also Microsoft. Microsoft getting into the act with the Surface Duo, which is going to run Android, but is a dual screen device, and I think is going to have some heavy customization to support two displays in the way that Microsoft wants to show off a Surface. I think some gadget fans are going to be a bit disappointed. Everything that I've seen so far on the Surface Duo is sounding a little like BlackBerry. Like people keep not understanding this. BlackBerry didn't want to make an Android phone. BlackBerry wants to make a BlackBerry. So they're not particularly interested in all of the Android bits, but they want access to apps. And then they heavily customize the Android operating system and they make a BlackBerry phone. I'm getting the sense that Microsoft will probably play ball better, but that this is going to be a Surface first. And it just so happens that the core architecture underneath is Android. That we're going to see some pretty heavy customization. And it's not going to be a stock device and run Android and you're going to get the updates the fastest. I don't think Microsoft really has their sights set on making Android better so much as they want the best platform to kick off dual screen Surface devices. And in mobile, that means using Android. From Kepler67, Amazon Fire tablets use a fork of Android, and Twitch was bought by Amazon and put in their devices first. Again, I mean, like, I don't think this is a difficult concept to grasp, but you see a BlackBerry review, and they're like, oh, but it doesn't have all of these Android things. And you're like, yeah, it's not really an Android. It's just using Android. I feel like BlackBerry was pretty clear about their intentions here. Microsoft, similarly, because they're just now putting out some developer tools. And there are a couple places that are now starting to fire this up where you can get a sense of what dual screen is going to look like through emulation. So this is by way of ZDNet. Let me drop this in the live chat here. Written up by Mary Jo Foley. Microsoft starts rolling out dev tools for its dual screen Surface Duo Android phone. So on January 22nd, it is rolling out a preview of the software developer kit for the Microsoft Surface Duo dual screen Android phone, and it's making available new web standards proposals for developing for both the Duo and the Windows 10X based Surface Neo. This is what's so critical to me. These new standards are piggybacking an Android-powered device and a Windows on ARM. No, sorry. I don't think, is the Neo going to be on ARM? I think the Neo is actually going to be on a customized x86 platform, but it's Windows 10X. So Windows 10X is built all around this notion of having two displays that can kind of work with each other, kind of work opposite each other. You can use one for input and one for display, putting up menus and toolbars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is something that Android desperately needs. What I would love is the ability to put my video preview window while I'm editing a video on one display on my LG, and then put my editing tools all on the second display. Right now, Android 10 isn't smart enough to divide that, and app developers have to figure out a solution all on their own if they want to make use of a wide view kind of app. And they're not going to do that for an LG G8X. That phone's not popular enough. But we might see that with future iterations of tablet folding devices, the Galaxy Folds, et cetera, et cetera. I think Microsoft is going to move the needle on this a lot. So I'm anxious, but I'm excited because I think Microsoft has their sights set on a very specific kind of multitasking and interfacing. And it's not that they're really looking to make an Android phone, but I think Android will benefit from them making a Surface that happens to use Android. Again, these distinctions, I know I'm splitting hairs here, but I think this is going to be an interesting read. And then I think a couple outlets, like I think even The Verge put together a quick little promo on their first interaction with this new developer kit and what it looks like to use the Surface Duo software. Again, through emulation, but we're getting an early glimpse at what the Duo might look like as an Android-powered device. From the Sentinel 909, the next Dock 2 needs to become a standard. I can see companies gatekeeping and preventing this, but that's how it should be. Well, I hope that what we have are sort of, again, another spread of gadget disruption. A phone like the Surface Duo should be able to compete against tablets, and then with some good accessories, should be able to compete against laptops. Potentially even low-cost consumer desktops. That's what I want to see is different areas where we can get more use out of one product and disrupt the need to buy some of these other products. And I think we're getting really close. And the next dock, again, is just something that excites me for moving the needle on some of those conversations. I'm going to be talking about the next dock in a while, so I'm trying not to blow the next dock conversation for the end of the podcast. From Matt Tyler, the future's bright. The future's dual screen. I mean, again, I want more modular. I think the future is getting more use out of a bunch of different product categories. One thing that, in terms of the future, and a lot of companies are trying to make folding the future, Motorola is trying to prepare consumers for a fragile future. They're coming out with the new Razr. It's going to be a flip phone. It's almost exactly the same dimensions as the original Razr flip phone. And if we had any hopes that a folding phone after the Galaxy Fold was going to be more durable, I think Motorola is doing their due diligence in not letting consumers think that this is going to be a hardy, rugged kind of device. Probably far less rugged than the original Razr flip phone was. So let me just drop this link in here. This is a 42-second YouTube video by way of Motorola. Let me screen share this for those of you watching live. And Moto just wants you to know that on a plastic screen folding phone, now the screen is made to bend, so bumps and lumps are normal. That does not instill a lot of confidence in Motorola's folding strategy here. I've been really critical of folding technology, not necessarily. I don't feel, especially in its current implementation, that this is really going to revolutionize phones. I think it could bring some convenience. I'd love to have less pocket space taken up when I'm not using my awesomely screened smartphone. And I still don't think walking around with a mini folding tablet is really the killer app. But I don't believe that these types of compromises are going to make the smartphone experience better. Let me kind of cue through this. I feel like this just makes the device more obsolete faster. So this video is called "Caring for Razor," and they show like the screen itself is somewhat water repellent, but they don't show, water getting into the seam on the side by the hinge. Something tells me this is not going to be truly water resistant, but the screen can get a couple drops of water on it, and then you just want to wipe it with a dry cloth. They're very careful not to push water into those hinges. They want you to take care, but because it's a folding screen, bumps and lumps are normal, so it's not going to be a smooth surface. And then, the screen has a protective coating, but avoid sharp objects. So, definitely not going to be a phone that you're going to want to use like any type of pointer device or a stylus. And hey, none of that. Don't use a screen protector, because that would probably put additional pressure on the screen, and then removing it would probably damage the screen. And make sure you never put this phone in a pocket or a purse unless you close it. I just feel like this is a lot. I feel like this is a pretty heavy consumer education point to like get you on board what a folding phone is really going to be like. I don't know. I don't think the future's folding. And I know we've been seeing these stories like the next generation Galaxy Fold might be using this new type of micro glass that makes bending and folding easier. So then you'll have a glass display, but it can bend at a hinge. The problem I have with that is you're bending a much thinner layer of glass. And glass is still brittle, so even though it can bend, if it gets cold, it'll probably get more brittle. If you bend it a lot, it'll probably start to microfracture. It's going to be way less durable than the current Gorilla Glass that, if you try and do a drop test with it or something like that. I just don't think this is it. I think for the next couple years, the idea of a folding device is going to be more a vanity play, is going to be more like flexing that you spent more on a phone that can do something kind of novel, like bend, but it's not more practical. It's going to come with more compromises for performance, might come with more compromises for battery life. You're going to sacrifice more practicality and more functionality for the novelty of being able to bend. And I feel it's going to be a while before we can make up some of those differences in performance between bending phones and non-bending phones and arrive at price points where they can be daily driver devices that are lifestyle abused, being thrown into pockets and purses, and not horrifically expensive to repair and replace. I don't think this is the future. I think this is a tangent to the present. From Fat Produce, I'm excited for display material science to advance with these foldable devices. I think we'll learn a lot. I'm not sure that it'll all apply to phones, but I also look at things like, bending OLEDs and flexible displays in things like the automotive industry. Like that Sony concept car at CES having an entire dashboard OLED display. That is interesting. And we learned a lot from bending a screen, dating all the way back to the Galaxy Curve and the LG G Flex. So we are seeing those kinds of advancements, sort of morph into other industries. But I just don't see it for phones. I'm really trying to be the futurist and find the exciting side of this, and I can't. All I see are the very obvious compromises first, and then I see the potential for other industry, but not for our gadgets. From Boeing Byte, it's still better than reviewers breaking the first Samsung Fold. But remember, Samsung gets credit. They took a risk. They're innovative. They did something more ambitious. And so we need to temper our criticisms with praise. We need to at least praise Samsung first, and then point out that this is a $2,000 vanity piece which no one should ever buy as a practical daily driver phone. But credit. They need to get credit. Because if you don't give them credit, then their feelers get hurt. And if Samsung's feelers get hurt, then you don't get invited to press events anymore. Credit. From Matt Tyler, if the future is folding, then right to repair needs to be a thing. The Sentinel 909. Also, you need to caress it and sing a soft lullaby to access settings. It's hilarious. Okay, so that wraps up all of our stories, all of our links. I just want to point out, I have one little anecdotal story. Was it last week or the week before? I was just so excited to share the story of getting my camera back. So I shoot this podcast, and I shoot a lot of my talking to camera. Excuse me. A lot of my talking to camera sequences on Micro Four Thirds. But behind me, over here, right there, that's my Panasonic G9. And then for this podcast, I'm using a G85. And I like having two cameras to be able to set up different shots and stuff, short story long. My G85 had a problem where I crumpled the tripod thread. I couldn't really use it on a tripod anymore. It severely hampers the functionality of a camera I'm trying to use as a kind of a webcam. And I agonized over replacing it or repairing it. The bill for repairing it was way lower than I thought it was going to be. Happily got it repaired. It's back in the office, and I don't have to buy something else or try and find a way to recycle this piece of tech. It's still being used. I missed something huge in my Next Dock 2 video, and there are a couple video clips where you can kind of see what I'm going to talk about here. Actually, what I should do, let me see if I can pull up the photos and screen share. Oh, where did they go? This might take me just a second, but I think it'll be worth it for those of you watching the live stream. Those of you listening to the audio, I apologize. This is going to be terrible podcasting here for a second. But let me get into my Next Dock account. So I can't screen share this just yet because I don't want to show you my Next Dock password, because that would be bad. Then you'd have all of my tasty Next Dock information. Ooh. Okay. So I missed something. I was so excited ripping the cover off my Next Dock, shooting video on it. I went through the whole setup and that whole first impressions video. And it was after setting up that video that I saw there's actually a huge flaw on my Next Dock. Here, I can show this right here. I'm going to screen share this. It looks like the bottom casing of my Next Dock had been dropped. There's this huge dent in the front left corner where you could easily run your thumbnail in and separate the bottom of the Next Dock from the top panel where the keyboard lives. And it prevented the lid from fully closing flush. And again, here's another shot of it, just how warped that was. It's close, but you can see, when I hold it at just the right angle, how I can see through the two pieces, the top piece and the bottom piece, and I can see the table underneath. For a product that, again, this was a Kickstarter I backed in March of last year. It was supposed to ship in September, and it took till January to finally get in my hands. I shot the video, I edited the video, I posted the video, I go to pick up my next stock, and I notice, oh, that's weird. Oh, it's not closing all the way. I have definitely not dropped it. I have babied this thing, and it has only been used on that big table to shoot the video of it. I was gutted. I can't have this. I'm going to be doing close-up photography on it. I'm going to be doing a long-term review on it. And this is rubbing up against the glass of the display in a way that if I put this in a bag, that's going to be a pressure point. It's going to be a point where it's going to crack the glass. And I'm devastated. So the night I put out my next dock video, I make the decision. I'm going to reach out to Nextdoc. I'm going to try and get some support. I know they haven't started building any of the pre-orders. They've got parts, I'm sure. I'm hoping that they can service this, but I'm not super confident. Again, this is a Kickstarter company, and they're not making the next batch of Nextdocs. This was only to fulfill all of their backers. That's the only thing that got made currently, were just the backer devices. So I'm hoping they've got to have some extra units around. They had to manufacture more than just the devices for their backers. And I reach out to the Nextdoc. I don't explain who I am. I really wanted this to be a part of the Nextdoc review. But I hit up their service. I start a new ticket. Hey, I've got some photos. I just took this thing out of the box. It hasn't been dropped. I promise you this is, I've babied this thing since getting it. But there's this huge dent. And I'm hoping that there's some way that this can be serviced. If I can send it back to you, if there's a way to get a replacement, yada, yada, yada. I get a reply in like 15 minutes. And this was at night. So I'm assuming that this was because I was reaching someone in the in China or in Hong Kong. But I get a reply back in like 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, well, there's two things you can do. You can send it back to us, and we can ship out another replacement. Or if you're comfortable with this, we can send you a new bottom panel, overnight it, and you can have that much, much faster. And like that to me sounded amazing. Send me a new bottom panel. They sent out a little guide. It's 10 screws, and they're just regular Phillips head screws. You don't have to do anything fancy. You just pop off the bottom, put on the new one, and Nextdoc, totally fixed. 2 days later, I had a new bottom panel, and now my Nextdoc sits totally flush. The screen closes exactly like it should. All of this looks pristine. It's super pretty. I got a little smudge on it right there, but that's because I had something messy on my desk that I don't need to talk about right here. And everything's good to go. The whole replacement took 15 minutes because I was being as careful as I could. And this is the sort of busted and bent, which, it's going to be kind of hard to see on this podcast stream, but you can see it hooks. This edge kind of hooks up. Kickstarter company, they had some issues getting these products out the door on their timeline, but phenomenal customer service. Very quick to respond, very quick to send out a part. I was happy that I didn't have to send this back because I was just imagining like I'm gonna have to wait for the next batch of manufactured Nextdocs, and then I'll get it back and be able to talk about it. But that kind of moment, just so exciting to talk about because we don't always get those opportunities. Like, I can talk about my anecdotal experiences with Samsung. I've had very poor experiences with Samsung, especially Samsung batteries in their smartphones. Trying to get those things serviced and replaced, it's just a very long process that then doesn't always make it back into the videos and the reviews and the commentary that we put together. The flip side of that is I've actually had pretty good experiences with LG. My G5 was the most troubled phone I've ever had. I went through 3 of those at Pocket Now before I got one that worked. But LG was very aggressive in trying to get those things out there because they'd just gone through the G4 boot looping. We let one idea sort of latch hold, and that's the only thing that we seem to let go in the consumer consciousness. This company once had a problem with support. They will always have a problem with support. To have this kind of an experience with Nextdoc, again, a tiny little Kickstarter company, the CEO of the company reached out and said, hey, I hope everything's doing great. I hope your product's doing well. Please let us know if you have any other issues. And then I told them I was a gadget reviewer. I don't know that I've ever had that experience. I've had to play the gadget reviewer card a few more times than I would really like to in the world of support. Like, hey, I'm having this issue with a product. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. I'm willing to pay. I need this thing to be fixed. I review these products and I'm on TV. Is there anything we can do to facilitate a repair? Oh yeah, we'll get right on that. Not cool. Really not cool. But me going out and saying, hey, this is, I've been so excited for this product. I was really looking forward to using it. The case is dented. What can we do? Oh yeah, we can ship you out a new one like in 2 days. Awesome. Oh, by the way, I also made a video on your next dock. That to me is the way that this should work. That to me is the way that this should happen. So I just wanted to share that little story right there. That'll be a part of the final review, but you guys got the sneak peek here in the podcast. I'm just so taken with it. It's such a killer piece of hardware. And I'm debating. I'd actually really like some feedback, some thoughts from those of you watching and listening to this. I'm debating whether or not I should make one longer video comparing different devices, or if I should maybe make like 3 shorter, punchier videos. Because I feel like there's something to be said for connecting to a phone with a desktop mode, connecting to a phone that doesn't have a desktop mode, and then alternative uses, like hooking it up to a computer, hooking it up to a Nook, hooking it up to a Chromecast, hooking it up to a camera. 3 major topics, but I don't know if they should really be 3 separate videos. So if you've got some thoughts on that, you can, obviously drop them here in the live chat, but also hit me up on social media or drop me an email or hook up in some way. I just feel like this is becoming a more important product to talk about. And even with my G8, like my SIM card is back in my G8 because I just got tired of swapping my SIM card between a bunch of different phones. The G8, I don't have Android 10. I don't know if the G8's Android 10 has a proper desktop mode, but my G8 on Android 9 does not have a desktop mode. And it's still really handy plugging the phone into a bigger screen and having a keyboard and touchpad. As soon as I was done with the repair on this next dock, I plugged it in to make sure it still worked, but the phone I had most immediate was the G8. So it was just screen sharing the G8. I fire up the Discord app and I'm immediately in a conversation on my Discord server, and I have a full keyboard and mouse to do it with. It's silly because it's just a vertical stripe. It's just a vertical portrait mode screen share on a landscape display. But having a proper keyboard, a tactile touch keyboard, still super handy. And writing articles and editing video where it goes into the landscape mode, it's still an Android screen share, but that's still more surface area to work with. All of these little things do seem to get better even when you don't have proper desktop mode software. So it's good times. I'm really happy with this. Lots of stuff coming up. We can kind of start getting into the wrap up on this podcast and actually get out of here in under 2 hours. How about that, folks? I'm going to have a lot of audio kit coming out over the next couple days. I've got a large diaphragm condenser microphone from a recording company. I've got some beautiful earbuds. For as critical as I've been of true wireless, and while I still prefer neckbands, I'm under embargo for some great true wireless earbuds that are going to be really fun to talk about. I've got some more Bluetooth cans to talk about. Like I said, some budget options to talk about. And my next video for hashtag 2020 hearing is going to focus on setting volume limits for your phone and why we need to be careful, not just looking at the volume slider. So just to tease what that video is going to be about, I get a lot of responses from people that say, oh, well, I just always set my volume to 50% and I never go over that. And that doesn't really mean anything. 50% on one phone can be a lot louder than 50% on another. And 50% on one pair of headphones can be a lot quieter than 50% on a different pair of headphones. So I'm going to try and break down a little of the science as to why that happens. And then also some tips and tricks to make sure that you can set a comfortable listening volume for you, even though the tools that we have to measure that aren't consistent. 50% on an LG, very different than 50% on a Samsung, which is also very different than 50% on a Huawei or a Moto or a Pixel. So I think it's really important just to kind of set some guidelines so that you guys have better tools to make sure you're not blowing out your hearing when you think that you're actually trying to do something kind of safe. So I'm hoping that video will be out end of the week with some other headphone reviews, some other gadget reviews. And I think I've got some long-term check-ins coming for some of these other smartphones that I've been spending some time with. I still have the Xperia 5, and I've got a video for that for the camera and the camera updates before Sony demands that I send that phone back. I really like the phone. I don't want to give it up just yet. So be on the lookout for a bunch of stuff coming out. And and I also am going to have another video coming out from Newegg. Another video talking about ray tracing. NVIDIA put out a new patch for a compressed way to do ray tracing, which significantly improves frame rate. And it has to do with DLSS support. So be on the lookout for that, because we're going to play some Wolfenstein, the new patch. It's one of the first games to support this, and I think it's going to be I was very surprised by the numbers we saw moving back and forth between different settings: ray tracing on, ray tracing off, DLSS, compression, blah 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 blah. So that's going to be coming out soon here too, folks. That's going to do it. I love it. This is going to be great. Wrapping up this podcast with 8 minutes to spare before we hit that 2-hour marker. Thanks so much for listening. This was an amazing live chat to be a part of. Matt Tyler just broke some news on controversial face recognition tech. I'm going to read up on that. We'll probably talk about it next week. But so many videos out there. I had a busy week last week. You can catch up on all of the content that we produced that I produced on SomeGadgetGuy.com. I'm going to have links to all of the stories that we talked about today in the show notes for this podcast episode. More podcasts and other content creators to highlight, especially if you've been listening to the audio version. I'm starting to build in more plugs for some of my friends who are making really cool content. So give them a share, give them a listen, and we can always use more of your support. Over on the subreddit, reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Amazing content being shared. We still need your upvotes. We still need your participation. We still need your comments. And it's not such a bad idea to cross post. If you see something really cool on our subreddit and you go and share it on another subreddit, there's some good ways for you to kind of get some Reddit credit. They call it karma, but get your internet points so that you are you're a more serious force to be reckoned with on those Reddit platforms and subreddits. Folks, I'm going to wrap this up now. For everything that might be going on in your life, just to take that moment, to take that minute, reach out to a loved one, hit up a friend, rekindle a conversation. Life is short. Don't let it pass you by. And I'll catch you all back here next week. You know where you can find me around the rest of the internet, at SomeGadgetGuy on the Twitters and the Twitch and the YouTubes and the Facebooks and the Instagrams. And I want you to have an amazing week with your technology. I want you to do awesome with your tech. I want you to be awesome with your tech. And I'll catch you back here for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show next Monday. Take care. I love you all. Be well. I'll catch you back.